The path of the Fulton County indictment is about to get wild, and not just because of the massive number of defendants, an indictment, which of course is 19, or the fact that some of the defendants are famous, very famous, because the indictment includes a former White House chief of staff, a former New York City mayor, and, oh, yes, the most famous person in the entire world, former President Donald Trump. But it's about to get wild because the Fulton County indictment presents many legal twists and turns, and most are in uncharted legal waters. On Monday, this coming Monday, there's an important hearing in Georgia federal court. At that hearing, it is possible that the federal judge will remove the Fulton County trial. In short, he'll take that trial and put it in his court, the federal court, not Fulton County. If her indictment does get moved in whole or in part, you can expect Fulton County DA Fani Willis will appeal that removal. That appeal then will go to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. And if Willis wins on Monday, that means former White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows and former DOJ lawyer Jeffrey Clark, who brought the motion, will lose. And do you know what they're going to do if they lose? They're going to appeal to the same court, to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit. And then what happens? Well, the remaining 17 defendants in Fulton County DA Willis are tied up in knots until the appeals are decided, unless Willis decides to sever the cases and try the first 17 alone without Meadows and Clark in the court in Fulton County. And here's another thought. And if there were not enough unknowns, no one knows how long the 11th Circuit will take to decide the appeal. But think about this. Whoever loses in the 11th Circuit, whether it's Meadows and Clark or Fani Willis, someone has to lose, you can expect that the losing party will then head to the United States Supreme Court. By the way, the United States Supreme Court is in recess until the first Monday in October, and who knows when they would decide the case even after that. Bottom line, a wrench has been thrown into the works, and no one knows what will happen. Gray Analytics Vice President, General Counsel, and former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Jay Town, joins me. Jay, am I right that this is really going to go on a bizarre road?
100% right, Greta. These are, when I was looking up these issues, they're just, oftentimes these are matters of first impression, especially when you have a scenario like we have in Fulton County. You don't have individuals typically being removed for prosecution when there's 19 of them, right? And some of them have charges that aren't related to the RICO statute or aren't related to President Trump even in their criminality. You have the ability to get that immunity if it is removed, so that the supremacy clause would actually kick some of these defendants out. Once a RICO case, when you start pulling defendants out, it's very brittle, and they're all sort of connected like a table of organization. You pull one out, and suddenly there's a defendant out there that's not connected anymore to the fulcrum, which in this case is President Trump. So that makes it even more difficult. And one more layer here is the defendant Cheesebro, the lawyer for Donald Trump. He filed a motion for a speedy trial, which Georgia has to grant him, and they have to grant it in the grand jury cycle in which we're in, which is now. So he has to go to trial by October or something. So this is all
what about
putting
the
a
other
huge
ones?
wrench.
What if the other ones say, I don't want a speedy trial, I can't be ready, but you've got one defendant saying, I have an absolute right to a speedy trial, but you need everybody together in order to make it a racketeering conspiracy case.
Right.
It's not impossible, but it makes it extraordinarily difficult for the prosecutor if one's going to trial in a short period of time, and you've got others who want another trial, and still others are up in the U.S. Court of Appeals and the 11th Circuit, and maybe onto the Supreme Court. It is bizarre.
It is, and no jury in Fulton County is going to care about Cheesebro, right? They want to see Donald Trump in the courtroom with Mark Meadows and Rudy Giuliani and all of his legal team sitting there looking guilty and thunder away at the jury at their guilt. But when it's just little old Cheesebro, right, or some of these other co-defendants that nobody knows, that's just not as sexy. And while we'll cover it and we'll talk about it, I don't know that a Fulton County juror is really going to go home and brag to his neighbors about the jury he just sat on. And I tell you, there's so many issues in the indictment itself that she's going to have a lot of.
Well, the other thing too is that if she's forced to go to speed trial on that one, all the witnesses get locked into their testimony when they testify at the trial, and those are the same witnesses that are going to have to testify later. So then at the next trial, when they go to testify, if they say 3 words that are different from what they said at the first speedy trial, all of a sudden they're going to be made to look like liars because it's inconsistent if it's relatively material. You know, so I mean, the problems that are laid out for the prosecution, if the lawyers are smart and aggressive, I mean, it should be. I mean, it could be a challenge for her.
Oh, it will be a challenge for her. She never imagined the legal conundrums that have just presented themselves in the last 2 weeks since the indictment. And so she's going to have a lot more issues than her office ever imagined handling. If you read the response to the Mark Meadows removal motion from Fani Willis's office, which she signed, they've never considered any of these issues. She cited like 6 cases, all of which were cited by Meadows, and it was really just a 13-page whine about why she's so wonderful and Mark Meadows needs to stand trial just like any other defendant in the state of Georgia. Well, I got news for Fani Willis. He's not any other defendant. He was the chief of staff to the President of the United States, and he has a motion for removal in a United States District Court. So he's a little different than the gangbanger that she charged yesterday for whatever.
J-Town, thank you. It's going to be interesting to watch a lot of legal issues, new legal issues.